Welcome back to the Python Praxis. So far, we've uncovered the power of operators in Python and how they shape the way our programs handle data. Now we step into one of the most critical turning points in programming: control flow. This is where your code learns to think for itself. Instead of simply running from top to bottom, your programs will start making choices, reacting to conditions, and behaving intelligently, just like real decision makers. By the end of this lesson, you'll understand how to guide your program down different paths depending on the situation. In other words, you'll be teaching your code how to say, if this happens, do that. Otherwise, do something else. So buckle up, we're about to give your programs the ability to reason. Let's dive right in. Up until now, our programs have just gone line by line. Okay, but what if we want to make decisions in our code? That is where the if statement comes in. An if statement checks a condition. In Python, the if statement is used to run specific code only when a condition is true. It allows your program to make choices and respond differently depending on the situation. How it works. The condition is usually written using comparison or logical operators. If the condition is true, the indented block of code below the if statement runs. If the condition is false, Python skips all the indented block of code below the if statement. The syntax of the if statement is as follows. We start the line with if, and then we write the condition. A colon is required after the if condition. In the next lines after the if, we place the block of code that will only run if the condition is true. These lines of code that are inside the if and will run only if the condition is true must be indented, either with tab or 4 consistent spaces. After the block of code inside the if, our code continues in the next lines but not indented, and this code will be executed either the if condition is true or false. This program flow diagram visually and clearly explains the if conditional. After completing the previous statements of our code, we run into a flow control point, an if condition. In case the if condition is true, the block of code to the right is executed. Statement 1, then statement 2, and so on. And then our program continues with the rest of the code. In case the if condition is false, then Python skips the block of code to the right, and the flow of our program continues with the rest of our code. Here's an example. We assign to variable coffee temp the value of 45. Then we print, you picked up your coffee? Then comes the if condition. If coffee temp is greater than or equal to 60, Python prints a message. Careful, it's very hot, otherwise it skips that part, and continues to print the next message, you start drinking. Indentation is key, 4 spaces or a tab, and don't forget the colon at the end of the if line. In this exercise, we will write a program that compares two numbers. We ask from the user two numbers. Then, using a series of if statements, we check if they are equal or not equal, and if one is greater or smaller than the other. And after it's conditioned to print a message for each case. Looking at the code now, we see that at the first 2 lines, we request from the user to type 2 integer numbers that are assigned to variables a and b respectively. The next 2 lines are an if conditional that checks whether variable a is equal to variable b. If this is true, Python prints the message that a is equal to b. If this is false, Python continues to the next if statement. Then checks if variable a is not equal to variable b, and so on until the last if statement. In this exercise, various conditions may be simultaneously true, so we will get more than one messages printed. This exercise explains how comparisons come alive inside if statements. Sometimes we want 2 possible paths. That's the case that we use the if-else condition. What does it do? The if-else statement lets you choose between 2 different paths in your code, one when a condition is true and another when it is false. How it works? Python runs any statements before the if. It checks a condition, usually involving a comparison. If the condition is true, the if block of code runs. If the condition is false, the else block of code runs instead. After either one, the program continues normally with the rest of the lines of code. This flow diagram presents clearly the functionality of the if-else conditional. Python runs any statements before the if-else condition, then checks the if condition. In case the condition is true, the if block of code to the right side runs. statement 1, then statement 2, and so on. In case the condition is false, the else block of code to the left side runs instead. Statement A, then statement B, and so on. After either one, the program continues normally with the rest of the lines of code. The syntax of the if-else statement is as follows. We start the line with if, and then we write the condition. A colon after the if condition is mandatory. In the next lines after the if, we place the block of code that will only run if the condition is true. These lines of code that are inside the if and will run only if the condition is true must be indented, either with tab or 4 consistent spaces. In the next line we put else, followed by a colon. A colon after the else condition is mandatory. In the next lines after the else, we place the block of code that will only run if the condition is false. These lines of code that are inside the else and will run only if the condition is false must be indented as well, either with tab or 4 consistent spaces. After the block of code inside the else, our code continues in the next lines but not indented, and this code will be executed, either the if condition is true or false. To see in practice how if-else works, here are 2 examples. In the exam result example, our score is set to 72. After that, if condition checks whether our score is greater than or equal to 60, and in case it is true, Python prints, you pass the exam. Then follows the else statement with the else block of code that will run only in case if condition is false. So, in case of false, Python prints the message, you failed. Better luck next time. In our case, the if condition is true. Similarly, in the temperature check example, if the temperature is higher than or equal to 20, Python prints nice weather for a walk. Otherwise, if the temperature check is false, Python prints better take a jacket. In this case, the if condition is false, so the else block of code runs. Other times, we need many possibilities. We need a multi-branch decision. In these cases, a program needs to choose between more than 2 outcomes. That is when we use the if, elif, else structure. This structure allows us to check multiple conditions, one after the other, until one is true. The syntax of the if, elif, else statement is as follows. We start the line with if, and then we write the first condition. A colon after the if condition is mandatory. In the next lines after the if, we place the block of code that will only run if the first condition is true. These lines of code that are inside the if and will run only if the first condition is true must be indented, either with tab or 4 consistent spaces. In the next line, we put elif with the second condition, followed by a colon. A colon after the elif condition is mandatory. In the next lines after the elif, we place the block of code that will only run if the second condition is true. These lines of code that are inside the elif and will run only if the second condition is true must be indented as well, either with tab or 4 consistent spaces. We can add as many eligible conditions as we want, following the same rules as above explained. After the last elif statement, in the next line we put else, followed by a colon. A colon after the else condition is mandatory. In the next lines after the else, we place the block of code that will only run if all the above conditions are false. These lines of code that are inside the else and will run only if all the above conditions are false must be indented as well, either with tab or 4 consistent spaces. After the block of code inside the else, our code continues in the next lines but not indented, and this code will be executed, either the if or the elif conditions are true or false. What is important to note is, each condition must end with a colon. All code inside the blocks must be indented. The else block is optional, but runs if none of the previous conditions are true. Elif stands for else if, and lets you handle as many conditions as needed. Elif and else are optional. Include them only if your logic needs them. You can have as many elif blocks as you want, but only one else. It is important to understand the difference. If-else handles 2 possibilities, while if-elif-else handles many possibilities. In this flow diagram, we see clearly the functionality of the if-elif-else conditional. Python runs any statements before the if condition. Then it checks the first if condition. In case the first condition is true, the if block of code to the right side of the if statement runs. That block contains statements 1. If the first condition is false, then Python goes to the second control point and checks the first elif condition. In case the elif condition is true, then the elif block of code to the right side runs. That block contains statements 2. Similarly, if there is a third or more conditions from another elif control point, the program proceeds as explained above. If none of the conditions is true, then the else block of code runs instead. Finally, the program continues normally with the rest of the lines of code. We will proceed now with some real case scenarios to see the use of the control flow in action. For example, we want to write a program that accepts 3 integers that are the readings from 3 sensors and prints the highest value among them using the if, elif, else statement. The code is like this. In the first 3 lines, we ask from the user to type the readings of the 3 sensors, and we store them to the respective variables. After that is the first condition with the if statement that checks whether the reading from sensor 1 is higher than the readings from sensors 2 and 3. If this is true, Python prints the message, highest reading, and next to it prints the reading from sensor 1. In case the if condition is false, Python will proceed to the second condition with the elif statement that checks whether the reading from sensor 2 is higher than the readings from sensors 1 and 3. If this is true, Python prints the message, highest reading, and next to it prints the reading from sensor 2. If also the second condition is false, then our program proceeds to the else block of code and prints the message, highest reading, and next to it prints the reading from sensor 3. In exercise 1, we have a battery status checker. We have to create a program that takes a battery percentage from 0 to 100 as input and prints the status of the device. If it is 90 or more, it should print fully charged. If it is between 30 and 89, it should print battery OK. If it's below 30, it should print low battery, please charge. In this exercise, we have 3 cases for the status of the battery. So as you can see in our code, we start with an if condition. For the case that battery is more than 90% charged, and if it is true, we print the message fully charged. If the first condition is false, we have the second condition with the elif statement that checks whether the battery is more than 30% charged. And if this is true, prints the message, battery OK. If neither this condition is true, Python proceeds with the else block of code and prints the message, low battery. Please charge. Clear and simple. Now, exercise 2 is about a quiz score rating. A student completes a quiz. Based on the score from 0 to 100, the program should rate the performance as excellent if the score is 90 and above, good if the score is between 70 to 89, needs improvement if the score is from 50 to 69, and fail if it is below 50. In this exercise, we have 4 cases for the performance of the student, so we need 3 conditions in our program, 1 if and 2 elif. This exercise needs 1 more condition compared to the previous exercise, but has exactly the same philosophy with exercise 1. So as you can see from the code for this exercise, we follow the same steps. Both are great real-world examples of if, elif, else in action. In this second part, you've learned what control flow is, you've learned when to use a simple if statement, or when you need to use an if-else statement, or even when to use an if-else statement to check multiple conditions. You have also seen how each of them works through examples. In the third part of this lesson, we will go deeper in control flow, presenting more techniques, more tools, and more examples of actual projects. Until then, keep practicing, keep experimenting, and as always, happy coding.